Hello, friends. Welcome back to Hungry for More. We're so excited for this podcast episode because, as you see, we have a friend here visiting with Jennifer and I today. We'd like to introduce you to Anne Fernandez. She is an author, speaker, Reiki master, clinical hypnotherapist, meditation spiritual guide, and an oracle channeler. Like she says, she's all the things.
A lot.
A lot of things. And like you said, it's all coming from the same power, the same place, right? And that's something that we're talking about is right now, I think people are feeling the call to heal, the call to transform, the call to transcend our human ways and to live more as spiritual beings, more enlightened people. And I really think there is this movement or this pull that we're all feeling to do that. And it's so fun to see all the different modalities and the different ways that are available to us that speak to us, or maybe something we're going through in our lives, that one modality is the perfect way to, incorporate that practice and to experience that transformation and personal evolution. So we're excited to have Anne here. Anne, welcome, welcome. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Wow. So that would take a long time, though. So I'll just try to to tell you my story in a nutshell. So as you know, I grew up in a small island in a small village, and interestingly enough, because what we're about to talk about today started back then as a child in a small village in a small community, and the idea of not having enough food on the table. And so my journey, not just my spiritual journey, but all aspects of my journey, but especially including how I relate to food, and the emotion and the energies that go along with that, started way back then. And so I feel anyway that as I'm still working on how to sort of balance that out, I'm recognizing a lot of this coming from childhood when there was no food on the table. And so what happened for many years was when there was food around, it would be like, let me have as much as I can, because somewhere in my subconscious mind, it was like, if you don't, you're going to starve. You're not going to have enough.
Yeah, very tied to survival, very connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of your listeners, probably, if they were to look back, a lot of those behaviors started when they were growing up. So that's just a gist of my story as far as the connection with food and mindfulness eating and so on.
Yeah. That is an important connection that you just made. I think a lot of these habits and the way that we see ourselves and even our sense of safety and our sense of security really being tied to food. And then a lot of those beliefs are developed at that age. And then, of course, how our family used food to either motivate us or maybe punish us.
Mm-hmm.
And what that culture, so much of our culture is built around food within the family and then within our communities and churches even. And so that's
Right.
an point. And so, really, like we're saying, transcending that, coming out of that childlike understanding and ideas about food, transcending that is really about coming back to ourselves and being more mindful and correcting all of those beliefs that as a child seemed to protect us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you made that sound easy, correcting all those beliefs, but it's quite a journey.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could say, okay, now I understand why I do these things. Good, I'm going to fix them. But what I found that was very powerful for me personally, and then with the clients I've dealt with over 40 years, is clinical hypnotherapy work. And the reason I say that, I'm sure there are other ways for people to get into the subconscious mind where all these habits and behaviors and beliefs are filed. And I guess there's no longer a filing system, but maybe a hard drive. And so all of those things are filed in there. And the best way for us to change habits and behaviors that are no longer serving us is by going into that system and acknowledging where these patterns came from and shifting them or transforming them. And something important I want to share is that when we change a habit or a pattern, it's important that we replace it with something else, something more positive, something that works for us. And the reason I say that is because let's say you wake up one day and say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to eat chocolate. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. You know, maybe for a week or for a few days, you might be successful with that.
Yeah.
However, you go back to those same patterns and behaviors because you didn't go into that filing system, open it up, take that pattern and behavior up, look at it, and even acknowledge why it came up and why you have that. And then, most importantly, replace that with something positive. So, it's like, okay, I'm no longer going to eat chocolate, as an example. Instead, whenever I have the urge to eat chocolate, I will stop, I will take a deep breath, and just that process itself stops the mind from doing this automatic behavior. And so that is one way to begin to change and shift those patterns.
Yeah. I love that. And I notice, friends listening, notice when she said replace it with something else, it wasn't, drop and do 20 push-ups or go find a lower calorie food that's better. Truly, the replacement is usually something internal. It's something that we just mindfully have to find ourselves. In fact, you
being
said
conscious. It's being conscious of it, recognizing it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Jen, like you just said, it's like being conscious means, oh, I notice I'm wanting chocolate when I'm experiencing this emotion, right? And bringing the conscious practice in helps you go, okay, well, what's this really about? What need is being expressed in my body? And it's the need for comfort, maybe the need for assurance, the need to remind yourself you're safe and okay. So those are the replacements.
Absolutely.
That truly meet the need, but then that also on the brain level replace, the response, and it becomes your new response, right?
Yes. Yes, and thank you for bringing that up because that is true. Because when we say replace with something, well, hey, maybe I'll have a drink instead of the chocolate cake. That's not what we mean. So thanks for that reminder. So it is about replacing that emotion and whatever it is that's coming up that's feeding this idea of I've got to have all that chocolate. And once we recognize that, we can tap into a place within us, which I always say this, every single person, no matter what they've been through in life, there is a place within where there is joy, where there is love, where there is acceptance, where there is a recognition of the true self. Because who we truly are isn't always represented in all the things we do in our outer world, right? Those are things that we've come to believe that define us, and we react and respond from that. But if we peel away some of those beliefs, emotions, patterns, we peel away all those things, what we find is just a beautiful, sacred human being. And so each time, like you say, the replacement could be acknowledging and recognizing, you know what, I am whole, I am joyful without the chocolate, without this, without these things. I don't need to have all of those outer things to satisfy me, right?
What a beautiful replacement.
Yeah, right.
And it's true. When you say, it doesn't matter what you've been through, you can always tap into that place in you. And I have seen that to be true in these years of coaching and I refer to them, with my Christian background and affiliation, I refer to them as the living waters that Jesus talks about. And you never thirst, you never run out. It's just always this well available to you. And I have seen that when people will bring even the most dire, heart-wrenching situations, and we ask, look inside, is there a higher way to see this that feels better? Or is there something you can see in here that's for your good? Every single time people find access to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just reminded me too of something that I've done personally and also something that I teach, to practice becoming the observer of your life. And in a sense, that is connected with mindfulness, right? Because when we can sort of rise up a little bit above things and become the observer, we then can see things more clearly. We recognize why why we have these habits and patterns that we know are not serving us, but we still do them, right? So, but like you said, Robin, it takes being mindful. That's the first step. And perhaps maybe you'll agree with this, that being mindful and getting into that practice take a deep breath, stop for a second. You have to have some way of stopping this automatic train of behavior and thought, right? So some things I share and I use myself is literally to say stop. I say out to do something, and keep going through some pattern behavior I know is not good for me. If I say stop, it's like my brain goes, "What are you doing? You always have this chocolate cake when you're feeling sad," right? Because our brain loves patterns. It loves to just do things on automatic. So it does take a lot of mindfulness, for us to at least stop that train of thought and those behaviors.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
So-
that, becoming an observer of your own life. Like if people literally just thought about standing back and watching yourself as a person, because it's always so easy to observe and see exactly what's going on
Right.
with someone
Absolutely.
else. We need to do that with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? What is my trigger? Why? do I do this?
Absolutely. And I want to offer up some. Yeah. Right. I want to offer up a tool, if you will. And it just made me think, as you were talking about that, being the observer, that works, and it's very powerful, is to physically move your body. So let's just say, let's take it back to, the mindfulness eating and what you both do. Just say you're in the kitchen all the time. There's a tendency to reach, for something that you shouldn't have and you don't need at the moment. And whatever it is, just remove your physical body. There's a whole therapy I do around this as well, where just shifting your body your mind will shift and move to another place. And you'll find that you're not focused on the food or, whatever the thing is that you were about to do. So I think that's just a really great tool and a simple one to begin with.
That is great.
No, that's great.
Love that. We talk often of transition energy, right? And that made me think of that when you're in that room where you tend to have, right,
Yes.
those automatic responses, and it's the easy go-to. If you can physically remove yourself, there is a different energy in a different place, right? Your mind sees things differently when you're interacting in another area. So we can use transition energy to our favor.
Well, it's a tool just to support you, right? Coming in through the front door instead of going in through the kitchen. That helps the transition energy.
Yeah.
That just reminded me what you said about coming in through the other door and all of that. It's, well, you guys, this. We live in our comfort zones. As human beings, we want to stay in our comfort zones. And even though there's a part of us that recognizes, gosh, we shouldn't do this, and we know this is not good for us, that comfort zone is very powerful. And we want to stay there. So we have the desire, but we're still repeating the same patterns and behaviors because we're in our comfort zone. So a good visual I always share is that to imagine your comfort zone as this circle. And inside that circle is the things you do every day. You brush your teeth, you eat the same foods, the same behaviors and patterns. And then to imagine a circle outside of that circle. And it's called the growth zone. And so if people can use that visuals, perhaps you can even have them, draw those circles and ask them, what are they doing in their comfort zone? What are the patterns and behaviors currently in their comfort zone? Are they all serving them well? Or are some of those things they want to shift? And when you tell someone to step outside the comfort zone, it becomes a scary thing. It's like your whole being is used to this, right? But if you can have them just take one tiny step into the growth zone, which means changing and shifting one thing, one small thing on a daily basis, what happens is that all of a sudden they find themselves now in this growth zone, which creates awareness, which creates mindfulness, which puts them in that power place to now make the shifts and changes that they want to make in their lives.
Mm.
So, there's a third circle, which I don't go to because it's called a scary zone. it's, it's skipping the growth zone and saying, okay, now I'm going to change everything today and I'm going to go way out there and do X, Y, and Z. Well, if you do that, it really doesn't take at the deeper levels within you.
Right.
It's best to take the tiny little steps and keep expanding that growth zone, right?
Yeah,
So I hope that makes sense.
That does make sense.
It doesn't. I'm thinking of, I'm thinking of diet culture where they want you to jump from comfort zone to living like that new person,
Scary zone.
call it scary zone, where you're literally like, I have to live and function as a whole new person. We skip the small incremental growth zone.
Yeah.
And we go
the
straight
people who dump their pantry, get rid of everything, go buy everything, and they're just ready to start it all that day.
Yep.
and
Yeah,
feel like
and I guarantee you 99% of the time, they're not as successful with that, right?
No, it usually does not stick. It crashes.
Right.
yeah. So yeah,
Anyway,
I can see that. And I love that you highlighted the value of the growth zone, and it's incremental, which means your results will be slow
yes,
and incremental. That's why we want
last.
They
They last.
because we want things quickly, and we've been really sold in this industry that that's how it's done, right? We get it quick, and
right.
But what a beautiful thing happens in that growth zone with that transformation. And we're watching
Absolutely.
time.
And as you know, on every level, we live in a whole new culture that wants to get from A to Z without going through the process, right?
Right.
And you can, but it doesn't last. It doesn't stick. Because the truth is that the core of living life, of learning and growing, comes from the process.
Yeah.
The process is where the gift is, right? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Well, tell us, on this, I know that you've had lots of growth opportunities in your life with things that you've been through. One that you mentioned with us, and even how it correlated with food and your body, was in a stage in life that was really heart-wrenching for you, a difficult time. Would you share that with us, and how you navigated food and what you learned from that?
Sure. So I went through a period in my marriage where I was just so unhappy. I mean, just very unhappy, and couldn't really talk to my partner. So I didn't have an opportunity to share, to vent my feelings and emotions. So instead, I found that I could starve my body. I could not eat food. I didn't realize at the time I was really punishing myself, and it was the only thing I had control over. I didn't have control over the other person. At least I felt that, or the situation. So instead, well, what if I just starve myself, right? So I became anorexic. I didn't even have a word for it back then. It was later on I realized that's what it was. And so, of course, my body, reacted and responded, and I started to feel unhealthy. And one day I was, and I used to run. I would be, I would run and run and run until I feel like I could get all those emotions out, which helped, but they were still there. They were still buried deep within me. And until I had faced them head on, and worked through those emotions, I wasn't really getting anywhere. It was like I kept the cycles, were happening. It made me feel good for a moment, but not permanently. And what actually got me through that, I was running on the beach one day, and then I just went, sat in the sand, and stared out at the ocean at the horizon. And all of a sudden, I kind of dropped into this natural meditative state, which got me out of my monkey mind and into that space of stillness, and where I began to feel that I had power within me, that I do have power. I do have the ability to change things in my life. And that's when it began. It was dropping down to that space and getting out of this that really helped a lot. And it was from that moment I started to make changes. So that's when I said, I need a divorce. I'm not happy. I mean, that was a biggie. It took a few years, but I was able to finally get to that point and have discussions about what wasn't working and go through that process. But just sharing that emotion, sharing that deep feeling, in that moment, I felt so free. It was like something lifted off of me because I was able to finally express what I was truly feeling. And then the changes began. And it was a step by step. It didn't happen overnight. But then I realized, like, wow, punishing my body was not the way through this. But really loving myself and taking care of myself was the way through this. So that's when I learned about self-love and, self-care. And that began to change things.
Love that.
Yeah, I love that, the need to control is a mental thing, right?
Yes.
It's that human carnal part of us that sees ourselves, the ego that sees ourselves as a finite being. And so of course, if
Right.
always at risk of death and destruction, I'm going to want to control things. And so that's what
Right.
fighting and pushing the control type of thinking and behaviors. And I know I've seen it with myself in wanting to do this to my body when I don't feel a sense of control. It's so interesting. And I've seen it in coaching too. But
Yeah.
but what it took is coming down deeper in yourself and recognizing that you are not this finite,
Right.
vulnerable person at risk of death, no matter what, that you came down and connected to your true self, which is eternal, which is everlastingly safe. And when you can tap into that, that is when you were able to connect to that power and see what you needed to do. And
Absolutely.
and again, how
You know,
that,
you know what
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was
No.
just going to say what I love about what you both do is that uh, you also come from your own life experiences as well.
Mhm.
You didn't just read a book and go, okay, great, I'm going to teach this. You've both had your own experiences. And for me, anyone that I talk to or go to, I prefer someone who has walked the path, because I know you're both speaking from your heart, from your own experiences as well, as your, what you've learned. So thank you both for that.
Thank you. Yeah, true. We
Thank
definitely
you.
have. And everyone really has in some way, like you said at the beginning of this, how food at such a young age already ties to our sense of safety and control, and whether it's
Yes.
abundant or scarce, all that. And so,
Well, it's the
Yes.
first line of survival that's being provided for us. When we are born,
Right.
if that is not provided, we die. And so it's the
Yes.
very first thing that brings us that comfort and cared for feeling.
yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I know I've shared with you that it's one of the reasons, not just for food, that I got into hypnotherapy work, because I did go to school for a couple of years to become a therapist. And then when I discovered the hypnotherapy college, I went for 2 years there. And because I saw how important it was to go deep within and to look at what is really going on at the bottom level of all these patterns and behaviors. And for me, that's what hypnotherapy does. It can take you into that place where you can finally shift things, and move things that aren't serving you at the moment. And where you can create and envision what you want in your life, how you want to see yourself. And that's another thing I wanted to add to all of this. So there's the mindfulness, the recognition of what emotion am I feeding, right? And then creating a system or having a goal in mind, but also visualizing is very, very powerful. So let's say you have someone that, wants to change these habits and behaviors, especially connected with food, and you kind of set them up on a path. And I think it's powerful to have them for 21 days because that's what the infamous they say it takes to create a new habit or to shift and move an old habit. And to have them envision what they want to look like, what they see themselves as at the end of whatever process you're taking them through. And to maybe even have a photograph. Maybe they have a picture of when they were 20 or whatever age, and they were joyful, they were happy, they looked the way they wanted to look. And to even put that up on their refrigerator, something to remind them that that is what they are, is the end goal for them, right? Because the mind does not know the difference between real or imagined. So the more we can imagine and create an image of what we want, the more we can bring that to fruition.
Ooh, that's really
I want to
helpful.
make
I think that we are
Awesome.
definitely
Well,
going to use that.
say that again.
I think we definitely
Okay.
need to put
So-
that into practice.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, because we are body, mind, and soul. We have to address all aspects. So everything ends up in the body, right? Feelings, everything. I mean, when we get sick, when it has to do with food, everything ends up in the body. And so
Right.
the fact that you focus on that, yes, and address that, but then we also have to address our thinking process, right? How is that affecting what we're doing? And for me, I like to always look at the spiritual aspect of it because we're all those things.
Right. I was talking to somebody the other day and they said they just got over their second round of sickness consecutively. And she said, well, I guess I'll just sit here and wait for the next one. I go, yeah, it'll come. And then that very same day, I read a quote and it said, when I'm not feeling well, I don't tell people I'm sick. I tell people I'm healing right now.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It completely changes your mindset. Like, yeah, I'm healing from whatever decided to come camp here, but I'm in the process of healing. Mindset, man, if you think it's going to happen, and for us with our clients, it's I'm never going to lose the weight. I'm always going to overweight. I'm always going to do this. So all of this is just so powerful, and it all begins in the mind. I love the visualization now, and I really do think that is very powerful.
Yes.
Well, the very first thing I had learned in hypnotherapy school, I think it was the first week I was there, when they said, the mind does not know the difference between real or imagined.
Yeah.
And I just stood there and I went, wow, that means I can imagine whatever I want. I am the creator of my life. And I think we talked about this, Robin, where all of us, including me, grew up, with religion. And how dare you say that you are the creator of your life? Only the creator is in charge, right? And I accept all beliefs. It doesn't matter what we believe about all of those things. We are the creator of how we live in this 3D world, how we walk our path in this particular existence. We get to create that. So how powerful is that?
Oh, it's powerful. It's exciting. I love that that's becoming more of the conversation, accepted, that we're realizing how our minds can be utilized for good, and also recognizing that that we are creating everything. So if we don't like a certain result in our life and we take responsibility that is part of our creation, then we can take our power back. And these tools that you've shared today. So I'm so appreciative that not only in this conversation, just sharing about you, but you've given us and our listeners some real valuable tips and ideas on how to address these things, right? And tools. And so what a blessing. Thank you for offering those.
May I suggest something real quick?
Yeah.
That I wanted to add on and I forgot. So as I guide people through things and as you guide people through, their journeys, I think I feel that having the system of visualizing where they want to be, and then the work that you do with them, but also journaling. I find journaling to be very, very powerful. And so that would be another tool that, to add to this guidance that you give with your clients.
Right, like perhaps journaling what you've just envisioned with your imagination and then writing it as if that's who you are and what is for you, right? That it's
Yes.
actually at work in your life already, what you've envisioned.
And also one more thing that as you journal, sometimes it's good to journal when you're having those feelings and emotions about like, right now, I just want to eat a hot dog, or whatever it is. And if you take that paper and, and you start writing what you're feeling, right now, I want a hot dog and blah, blah, and you just keep going down, you keep writing as though you're just doing automatic writing. And it's interesting what happens. You end up at a place where the hot dog you wanted is here. And you've gone through this process of writing all the emotions and feelings down. And then you end up with, you know what? I'm not even hungry.
It's not even about this hot dog or what I want.
Right.
It's so true. And this is why Jennifer and I are so passionate about this, is because when you just stick with the automatic response and you just eat the hot dog, you miss out on all this information the body has for you and your spirit has for you, right? You miss it. So it really becomes less about even the weight and all those things. It's about, don't you want to really connect and know yourself? And these habits, these reactions to whatever's going on inside of you is completely hiding you from that. And when you discover that place in you, when you write and you see, you know what, actually what I really need right now is this, and I'm capable of meeting that need, and you meet it, what happens is beautiful. And then, yes, the body always, the physical part is the last for us to see and manifest what's going on. And so the physical body will follow suit and it will release. It'll be like, thank you so much for that. So I can release what's not serving me on the physical level. It's just so beautiful. I just love it. It's amazing. I want to finish.
May I end with saying something? I guess we're wrapping it up. I feel that the desire to change something and shift something, you have to have something that is more important than that behavior and that pattern that you're currently doing. So that is something that if someone can become aware of that, what is most important in my life, to live till I'm 90, to be healthy, to be happy, to be joyful, is that more powerful than me continuing this pattern of eating a certain way that is not bringing me to that image and that place that I want to be in? And so I think having something that means more to you is very helpful. It's an energy that can pull you forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's way more motivating to work towards that than to try to motivate yourself from guilt and say, you shouldn't.
Or from what somebody else wants of you.
Right. Exactly. By the way, I could talk with you guys for hours. This is wonderful.
Totally.
It is so true. Me too.
Yeah. Yes. And please let me know how I may serve. I am at a place in my life of serving humanity, and so let me know.
I love it. How can people find you?
So I have a website which is almost complete, but it's up. It's called risingawareness.com. And my email is there. People can ask me questions. So they can connect with me by going to the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, I found Anne and have had personal experience with her that has been such a blessing in my life. So thank you, Anne, for what you do, what you bring. Doesn't she have a beautiful spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I could sit here all day. It's kind of like when we met. I was like, yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to close with a quote that you shared with Jennifer and I. If you wouldn't mind sharing that with us and what that looks like to do that, this advice from this quote, right? So share the quote and what does it look like to do just
Is it a quote I shared earlier?
Oh, it's the
Yes.
book. It's the
Matt
book.
Kahn.
Oh,
I can read it if you need me to.
okay. Yes. It says, whatever rises, love that. Whatever rises, love that. And as we know, that is the key, right? For love thyself, know thyself, love thyself. And then all these other things will just fall into place.
Yes. So I love that because whatever rises, so many of us have the habit of whatever rises, run.
Right.
Right. That's kind of the response. Whatever rises that doesn't feel good, go grab something to eat or run. And what just this beautiful shift of like, what if instead of right now I go grab that thing that my brain has memorized that,
Yeah.
go run to, what if I just sit and love that? What if I sit and love this sorrow that's coming up and love whatever it is that's expressing? So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, look for Anne. You can connect with her on Facebook. You're posting on Facebook
Yes.
as well. Anne with an E, Fernandez with a Z on the end. And thank you, friends. So good to see you. Thank you for
It's
serving.
so amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you both.
We'll have you back.
I love what you're both doing. I love it.
Thank
Oh,
you. Well, we will definitely have you back. I think
have
this
you
is
back and
just
maybe-
synergy right here.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Yes. And we're going to be doing a retreat, in-person retreat. I'm envisioning that down the road.
I am too. Every time we talk to someone, I'm like, this is going to be the best retreat ever.
Oh,
Okay, have a blessed